Caterham 420R Championship for caterhamracer.com is sponsored by Just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights for the Caterham 7, and by Design and Display Structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens, and by Avon Tyres, the official tyre supplier of Caterham Motorsport, on road, on track, on Avons. So, crunch point, the final round of what has been an incredible second season for this Caterham Racer 420R Championship. It all comes down to two more races here in the virtual version of Norfolk on the Snetterton 300 circuit. Good evening, everybody. This is effectively our own version of finals weekend, so to speak. The very circuit where Caterham Motorsport will round off their 2020 season. Not maybe the circuit they were expecting to finish the season on, but even so, Snetterton in Norfolk hosts the final rounds in real life on October 31st, and despite the dates, hopefully there'll be no frights for them on race day itself. Before then, we still have two evenings worth of racing to settle both of the championships for caterhamracer.com. The Academy Championship comes this time next week, but right now it's time to settle who takes the top prize away in Season 2 of the 420R Championship. The first actual champion after Season 1 was purely a series during the lockdown period. Once again, Scott Woodwiss and Chris Hutchinson again on commentary for you, and we're just into the beginning of qualifying here at Snetterton. And Chris, it's been one of those seasons again where obviously following the real calendar it's been a little bit more elongated. It hasn't been rapid fire as it was in the first season during lockdown, where we could do races week on week. But even so, it's just the fact we've had these gaps and also this very quick run into the end of the season. It's made it even more intense considering where we are in the championship now. We'll get to the championship standings in a second, but this now is going to make it a really crucial evening. We could be set for two fantastic races on a circuit where, let's face it, given my experience of commentating there and your experience of racing, it's almost as if it was designed back in 2011 when it was first remodelled for Caterham racing with all the straights and corners. This should be ultimately the best venue to finish off the season.
Yeah, it's a brilliant track. It's got a bit of everything. Like you say, you've got the long straights where Caterhams can tow each other and you can get little packs forming. But equally, you've got a good challenge of corners. You've got hairpins, and we even get down to second gear or even first gear sometimes in the 420s around these bends. So that's quite unusual for a track. Normally, a Caterham will go around all the corners, in third and fourth gear. That's its normal sort of place. But yeah, it encourages really good racing, and we're really building to a crescendo with the championship. So it's really good, especially in the mid pack. So sort of 7th down to 12th, I think, is really closely fought.
Why don't we take a look at then how things are going to shape up, more importantly, going into tonight's racing. So we've got two versions of the points for you in terms of how things stand. This is the points table you've been seeing all through the season with the overall scores. So on overall points, Steve McMaster leads the way with 338 from Jaroslav Cherny on 325. James Murphy with 305 points. And then it was, I believe if I get my results right, I'll bring this up on the screen for a second here. 420Rs, the winner last time out was Steve McMaster with 2 wins. David Rowe, of course, in 4th with Tim Van He 5th, and it's Willis Ferner, Christian Zaruta, who's back from holiday tonight, as well as Blair McConaughey and Steve Arnell. Now, that's how it sits with overall points, but that's not how things are going to finish, because we now need to look at how the points work out with dropped scores coming into play. So what you're seeing here is the drivers in order of dropped scores. Now, the bigger number is their overall total, so you might see some drivers a bit out of position. That means if you can see them, there are the grey numbers to the right, which shows you the order of which these drivers sit after their worst dropped score. And after those scores come into play, Steve McMaster still leads by 13 points from Jaroslav Cherny. James Murphy is 3rd, a few points ahead of Christian Zaruta, and David Rowe is 5th from Emil Jaselik, Paul Fernerhuff, Tim Van He, Tom Willis, James Fowler, and Blair McConaughey and Steve Arnell. So looking at that points table, Chris, it looks like in some cases, I guess on paper for some, as if it's a fairly straightforward task for McMaster to finish ahead of Jaroslav Cherny, ensure he gets some good results, and the championship's his. But as you know from real life, and as we know particularly from other championships that happen, when drop scores come into play, it's not as simple as just scoring the most points out of anyone else. It makes it a whole lot more complicated potentially, and a whole lot more tense, particularly having to work out who drops what scores to figure out who places where in the end.
Yeah, so I am hoping that halfway through tonight we're going to be able to update some scores in line, and so we get a good idea. But yes, it's not just as simple now as just getting a good result, because you now have to outperform your worst result from the year. So all the drivers will have different sort of goals and aims and expectations, but nevertheless, doesn't really matter what the end result is. You've still got to go fast, and the better your result, the better chances of you moving up. So yeah, it looks like McMaster might have this relatively in the bag as long as he has a reasonable evening. But if you look a little bit further down the championship order, you can see that Fernie Huff and Van Hee and people like that, they're all really close together. So they're all going to be fighting it out and duking it out for every place is going to count.
Yeah, especially on a night like this where we are actually going to be settling a championship. So we've got into our qualifying session right now, and currently top of the times is James Murphy, who has in real life, he had a bit of an up and down weekend at Stonington in real life. He's hoping to have a bit of a better time this evening here on the virtual version of Snetterton. But he was sort of near the top. It's actually Steve McMaster, who currently now goes fastest with a 2 minutes 5.198, and it is the top 3 in the championship. No, top 4 in the championship now, in that order. But that's exactly where they're going to start on the grid at the moment in this session. We've still got quite a way to go, but Steve McMaster has provisional pole from Joseph Chern. That's not really going to help James Murphy with his scores, being elbowed out of the last corner. James Murphy, before that happened, he's still third, despite all of that happening, and David Rowe is fourth. Then we've got a couple of interesting drivers up there. Steve Arnell showing his sort of single lap pace so far with 5th quickest. They're just ahead of Christian Zaruta, who is making a welcome comeback after he's been on holiday for the last couple of meetings that we've had. He's got up to 5th now with that latest effort. Arnell's now down to 6th. Emma Jaselenka just popped up to 7th fastest, ahead of Tom Willis, Paul Vernehuff and Tim Van Hee. So maybe 1 or 2 drivers, I think particularly again Blair McConaughey, but who's a little bit further back, but he A, may not have set a proper lap time just yet, and B, we know he's a better race driver than he is a qualifier, picking his way through the order. But it's intriguing to see that in terms of where drivers could potentially be starting, the point I was about to make is now been ruined now by the fact that David Rowe has just taken 2nd quickest. So I was about to say they're all in exactly the same order as the championship until David Rowe popped up to 2nd place, just over a 10th away from pole position. So the key thing is the fact that the top 4 in the championship are going to be at the moment, if it stays like this, on the first 2 rows of the grid. That makes it even more tense, particularly when you've got such strong drivers around you and they're all up there battling for the championship. Yeah,
absolutely. And like we've in pre-qualifying and even in the practice session beforehand, David Rowe did manage to top those times. So anything in the low 205s is an exceptional lap, and you can see McMaster on a 205.1, and in pre-practice David Rowe was slightly ahead of that, maybe a couple of tenths just outside the 204s. So he's now put himself back into the mix there, and obviously as a qualifying lap, that's a pretty good showing, and it's great to see the championship contenders all up there at the front, so hopefully we'll have a great battle between them.
That is certainly the hope. Here's David Rowe, who of course was busy as ever, of course, over the weekend, looking after a phalanx of cars amongst different championships at Donington Park, and good to see he's back behind the virtual racing wheel once again. As we say, 2nd fastest at the moment, which means he will start on the front row. This is a circuit where, as we mentioned, it is very much made, in some cases, almost tailor-made for Caterham racing, particularly the long straights, down the back straight of the Bentley straight, and down the long centre straight, exit the final corner. And it really does play to that sort of the saying, which is quite ironic, that the worst place that you want to be in a Caterham race, quite literally, is in the lead, out of the last corner, when you've got at least 1 car behind you tucked underneath your roll cage, because there is no guarantee, as Chris knows several times before in his time, both being the hunter and the hunted in those situations, that by the time you come out of the corner and by the time you get to the checkered flag, the order that you started the straight in, Chris, is never usually, in many cases, the order that you'll finish it by the time you cross the line.
No, you'll quite often in real life see drivers fighting to be 2nd or even 3rd place on the last lap, depending on the situation around them and what they've got going on. But yeah, certainly with the long back straight, it's possible to overtake up to 4 cars. So if there's a big pack, then yeah, you don't want to be at the front of it, because you're going to come out behind when you get to that finishing line. But again, in real life, you've even got an opportunity out the final corner to drag past up the hill the person in front of you. So it's never over until it's over at Snetterton, and we regularly see really close finishes.
Well, let's certainly hope so. We've still got in this qualifying session around just under 5.5 minutes to go. Here is Tim Van Hee, enters the evening almost best of the rest, up behind the top 4 in 5th position, ahead of Tom Willis with Paul Fernell, Christian Zaruta, Blair McConaughey. Then we have that big battle, Steve Arnell, Emma Jaselenka and James Fowler. Of course, they all are on the grid tonight by the looks of things. I'm just trying to count them all in. Yes, looks like all are in tonight from those in the top 12. No Chris Skillicorn tonight, but he's fresh from finishing off his first academy season, so congratulations to him. runner-up in the championship. So well done to his efforts. And apart from that, looks like that's just about it in terms of what we've got for the front runners that are up there. That's not really going to help Tim Van. He's had a quick lap time, getting very wayward on the exit of the
Hamilton's.
Yeah, exit Hamilton's corner. Forgive me, I got distracted by a message there. He is going to try and have to go into another lap to try and push on a bit more. But now I know Jaroslav Czerny has now gone to the fastest time, so he now takes provisional pole, but it's only by just under half a tenth. So we'll have to wait and see if anyone can try and better that if possible. James Murphy goes across the line, does not improve and stays fourth. And so really this is going to be crucial in terms of it's obviously we know how quick these guys are at the front, but we've seen it a few times now. Blair McConaughey pops up to 6th, so he's sort of not quite bucking the trend of not doing also well in qualifying and then dropping and picking his way through the pack in the race. This is going to be pretty crucial with the fact that we've got these 4 very evenly matched drivers, and we've seen it more than once throughout the season, Chris, that when particularly these top 4 get together in a battle, for the most part, they can work around each other pretty cleanly and pretty well. But there are occasions sometimes where it just takes one slip from one of them and it compromises not just their own race, but at least one of the others, because they're so tightly packed and so close in terms of their pace. Yeah,
any type of little mistake is going to impact the whole front of the group, and that's where we've regularly seen through the year the person who is at the lead at the point that happens is the one that generally just creeps away from them for the rest of that race. Again, Snetterton, I think last time we were here we did see the sort of similar style racing where there were packs and where occasionally people could ping off the front, so we'll watch out for that and start calling out when we see those little gaps appearing and just seeing whether that gap can be crowbarred further apart.
Well, let's see if they can close the gap. Of course, between the top 4 at the moment, it is only just over 0.3 per second. Then there's a 0.3 per second gap. In fact, there's just as much of a gap that covers the top 4 that there is between 4th and 5th, because James Murphy is pretty much exactly the same gap that he is currently behind the man on pole position, Jaroslav Czerny, to the man currently in 5th position. So Christian Ceruta's got some work to do, possibly a little bit of race rustiness after he has had a couple of weeks away on holiday. So good to see him back on the grid in what I like to always dub the Broad GP special. Now we're on board with James Murphy, and this is just tricky in terms of that long right-hander at Caterham. You flick left through Murray's, and you set yourself up for a long straight as you punch up through the gears to try and get the best lap time. Across the time line will come James Murphy. Of course, the best time at the moment is a 2 minutes 5.102. Not anymore, it's not. It's now a 2 minutes 5.150, because up to the fastest time has now gone James Murphy, but only by the fractional margin of 0.002 of a second. So quite good timing picking that one up, because of course we've just seen James Murphy with about just under 2 minutes to go, Chris, pop into pole position. Now the question's got to be Czerny, McMaster, Rowe, Ceruta, McConaughey and co. Do any of them have an answer to what Murphy's managed to pop in? It's not much he's on pole by. It doesn't matter. It's like the saying for Fast and Furious. Doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning. Doesn't matter how close it is or how wide it is. Pole position's pole position.
Yeah, and we've just seen Ceruta also improve. So that front 5 have now closed all the gaps up to just ridiculous margins. But definitely a pole is worth having around Snetterton. It can get really busy into turn 1 and around the early hairpins. So being at the lead, in front gives you a little bit less variables to play with, and therefore it makes it a lot easier. But yeah, it's not the end of the world though, especially even drivers down in sort of 6th, 7th and 8th. They're going to be thinking, I can still get with that front pack as long as I have a good opening section.
Well, I think everyone's going to be hoping to have a clean one, particularly when they're going to be so tightly bunched into those first few corners of Ritchie's and then Wilson, then that tight, twisty infield section. I think they'll get a proper chance to stretch their legs once they get themselves here onto the Bentley straight on the opening lap. But how close drivers are to in relation to each other is going to be the key thing if there's going to be any crucial battles. Of course, we remind you that in order to get a slipstream in these cars, and in both the 420Rs and the Academy, in the sim that we use, Assetto Corsa, the magic gap that you need is to be within half a second. If you're within half a second, you do start to get the advantage of the toe. And of course, with these cars being relatively unaerodynamic, with quite a rounded but blunt front end, they do punch quite a large hole in the air, both in the sim and in real life, which means you want to get a toe, pretty well simple to do so. Just noticing Tom Willis here, who's just kind of edging someone wide so he can get through to get his ideal line into the final couple of corners to put another lap. He currently sits 11th fastest at the moment, a second off, and this will be his final flying lap. He'll head towards the checkered flag and to complete the lap. It's 2 minutes 5.150 to beat. Christian Ceruta's coming across the line to try and improve. And at that time, he cannot quite do it. He does stay 4th. Steve Arnell, with his final effort, goes to 6th quickest. So that is 6th quickest now for Steve Arnell, just under 3/4 of a second off.
Yeah, really, really good there to see Steve late lap there, chopping up into 6th place and putting himself right in the mix.
So I think if there's anyone else who's still on a lap, they will be allowed to finish it. There's a few drivers already into pit lane to finish up their session. At the moment, it's still James Murphy who's there. Jim Earlham has popped up to 14th, but apart from that, doesn't appear to be at the moment anyone else that's doing so. I think Christian's just trundling back round to the pit lane as Paul Fernhoff decides he's going to park it on the grass, by the looks of things. And
I think that's what everyone's doing.
Yeah, it's a typical tactic. When the checker flag comes out, he simply just parks up and it's the session. Jaroslav Cherny is not on a lap. It doesn't like I think he's driving like he is on one, but I can't see a timer on the right hand side which suggests that he is, which possibly means that he has already completed a lap time, although he's carrying on, so this might be another lap. Now Blair McConaughey with his final effort looks to have gone 6th, so he's managed to displace Steve Arnell. Cherny comes across the line and on his final effort does not improve, so that is the end of the session for him and for everyone else. So, moving into the race, then race number 1, and here is how the grid will line up. James Murphy, who starts the evening 3rd in points, at least on overall scores, starts on pole alongside Jaroslav Cherny in 2nd. Steve McMaster, points leader overall, and also on drop scores is now 3rd, ahead of David Rowe in 4th. Christian Zaruta makes a welcome return and will start in 5th position alongside Blair McConaughey, with Steve Arnell from Emil Jaselink, Tim Van Heet, and Paul Fernhoff rounding out the top 10. 11th fastest, Tom Willis from James Fowler in 12th, Andrew Parker 13th, then Tom McEwing and Jim Earlham round up the top 15. Then it's Mark Rodman next from Alan Curtis, Daniel Mitchell, Mike Hilton and Michael Coomber in 20th position. And I think we were expecting Graham Hopkins, but it looks as though he may not be on the grid for tonight's racing after all, sadly. But we still have 20 cars though, because we even have our normal 18. There was enough drivers in the mix where we were able to squeeze everyone in. We had 21 cars qualify, so rather than just have a separate race for 3 cars, we put them all into one grid as we normally do and made it one bigger grid for this season finale. And quite a fitting thing to do so, being the final races of the season. So, with the grid set as it is then, as you mentioned, the top 4 in the championship, not necessarily in exactly the same order, but on the first couple of rows of the grid. This is going to be, of course, a tense evening of racing. The next 2 15-minute races are going to decide who wins caterhamracer.com 420R Championship in Season 2 of what starts down as the series during lockdown. It now has become a championship for the first time to, first of all, crown our Season 2 champion. And I think it might be a foolish thing to ask to make a prediction, but what are your thoughts on the situation here then? The first four drivers in the championship in those first 2 rows. We know how frantic it can be with these guys in front. You've got the likes of McConaughey and Zaruta also in the mix just behind them. This is going to be, I think it's an understatement when I say this is going to be a tense affair.
Yeah, for sure. You know what, David Rowe, I'm going to call him for this one. He's been showing some good speed and he's deserved some luck, so I'm going to call him maybe for the win. He's also got a little bit less to lose than the people around him. He's slightly sort of further back. McMaster obviously has got the most to lose, but he only needs a good result, and I think he will play the sensible game. So I'm going to call David Rowe for this win, and I'm also going to get Christian up there maybe in the top 3 as well. We'll see what happens and what that means for James Murphy and Cherny, but they're certainly going to go at it and go battling.
Let's of course forget Steve McMaster either. Of course he'll be up there, of course, being overall points leader. He's got the one with the most to lose, having a lead to defend and to try and hold off everyone around him, but starting in 3rd on the grid is going to be even tougher for him to try and hold on. So let's see who can possibly take this one. There is only 2 more races to decide who picks up the 420R title in this second season of caterhamracer.com 420R Racing. James Murphy on the right-hand side in the black and orange Caterham. Alongside him is the bright red car of Jaroslav Cherny. Steve McMaster in the pale blue car with the red front wings. And it's the black and green car of David Rowe. But also watch for the 2 cars behind of McConaughey and of Zaruta. Let's get the first race of the evening underway to take one step closer to finding out who becomes champion. The lights go out and race number 1 at Snetterton is underway. It looks pretty clean for everyone, not off the line so far. No one weaving and darting around so far, but they head towards Richie's corner for the first time. And Cherry now has the whole shot. He turns into the right-hander in front of James Murphy. He might also lose second place because here comes David Rowe on the inside. Onto the grass running wide is Tim Van Heat, as there are a couple more cars in the background. They are side by side into Wilson hairpin for the first time. McMaster tried to squeeze up the inside to push poleman Cherney down another position. So that's from first to third has gone Murphy. Into the lead goes Cherney, second row. Murphy's third. Then McMaster followed by Girouta and then McConaughey in sixth. It seems to see Emwood Jaselink in seventh place ahead of his fellow Belgian Tim Van Heat. Then it's Steve Arnell and James Fowler. So everyone appears to have made a clean enough start ahead in this first part of these first few corners. Girouta making a look up the inside as McMaster takes another place off Murphy, and so if it adds to his further misery on this first half lap, there's a bit of contact between them. I think James Murphy got a bit fed up there, losing places. He's going to hold on to fourth position, but you have to say from the first couple of corners, even from the start, it looked pretty even. As we'll see Girouta here possibly have a look into Oggies and actually McMaster running deep. So he outbrakes himself and allows Murphy to get a free pass back up the inside. But it looks as though, we've got. I want to hand Chris, but there's so much going on at the moment because we've got now Wide there for second place. No, round goes McMaster. That's the championship leader. Round he goes. That's dramatic for the championship. If it counts as one of his worst scores, a silver line will be that he'll be able to claw one of those scores back being his worst ones. That will be, he'll get back 32 points being his worst result so far. But now James Murphy a little sideways into the complex of Brundle and Nelson. So incredibly, a night that's so key for the championship. Not a great start for Murphy. McMaster in drama as Cherney and Rowe run away with it on the opening lap.
Yeah, McMaster is in flat last at the moment. He's got a lot of work to do. Like you say, he's actually got a bit of protection in that he's had such a good year. He may be able to drop this score without actually any impact. We'll see what we can catch up with that at the end. But also keep an eye, he's already up into 19th place. But like you say, a very solid start from Cherney. But Rowe, the person I sort of called, is right on his tail at the moment and looking like he might make a move into the turn one.
Just thinking about it, and they're side by side across the line. Cherney was in front by the humongous margin. The fact that it was a dead heat across the line between them. Literally nothing separated them across the line as they started lap number 2 as Rowe makes a very impressive move round the outside of Ritchie's into the lead here at Snetterton. But he has a log up on the outside front as he turns into Wilson. Third place still for Murphy. There was a change on for fourth there with Girouta trying to repass Emwood Jaselink, who's had quite a super start in the Team Lotus coloured green and yellow machine in fifth position. Then McConaughey, who's remained sixth. James Fowler is in seventh from Steve Arnell and Tim Van Heet. And it's Paul Fernerhoff who rounds out the top 10. Then it's Mark Robbins up to 11th. A strong start for him after he started a little bit further down in the field. It's Tom Willis 12th. Steve McMaster, after his spin exiting the right-hander onto the Bentley straight, is already back up to 18th place. Switch on here between Van Heet and Arnell potentially. Arnell sticks his nose up the inside at Agostini. Little love tap as he goes past, and that is him up into 8th position. So now, one of the key things a couple of the key things we've got to watch out for here now, Chris, is effectively 1, Rowe and Cherney battling away at the lead. 2, if it brings Murphy and Girouta and Co back into play if they keep on scrapping. And 3, that's another free pass there for Steve McMaster. How much progress this man makes back up through the field in the remaining 11.5 minutes. He's up to 16th now, getting past Alan Curtis and Andy Parker. But now he's got a lot of work to do here to get himself even back into the top 10 to score something that's even a respectable score, which will still even be his worst score of the season. Yeah,
exactly. So he's scored so many points in the early parts of the season that he really does have to get back up to this league route to actually start trying to increase his score at all. You saw 3 wide going into Brundle and Nelson, and Van Heet there missing out slightly. He's going to drop a few places. It looks like David and Cherney are working together to pull away from Murphy here. So Murphy's going to have to get his skates on to catch back up with those two and not let that gap go too wide.
Well, you say they're pulling away, but looking at the gap, a few moments ago it was 1.5 seconds. It's actually coming down pretty rapidly now to under a second now, or back up to 1.1 on the exit. So I think in the clear air, it looks as though that Murphy is starting to take full advantage of that, as we see once again. Murphy takes the fastest lap, but he was immediately snatching it away from David Rowe just after he took that. And the two leaders are still going side by side into Ritchie's with Rowe with his nose in front. But I think we've said it so many times before, it may look like they're working together, but James Murphy, again, is using the full advantage of the clear air he's got around him to set that fastest lap and to potentially start to close after them if they keep on interchanging positions too often in the fight to try and pull away. There's Steve Arnell running wide as he loses out to James Fowler, so he's now down to 8th position. McMaster, meanwhile, is up to 15th. His next target is Tom McEwing, one of next year's Academy drivers for 2021, but getting plenty of sim race experience. There is McMaster. And here's a key thing, Chris. He's got quite a bunch of cars in front of him. They're all pretty close together, and some of them are battling amongst each other, so that will help him close in. he's got to balance this right now between making the right moves, but at the same time not getting caught up in other people's battles, where, truthfully, he hasn't really got any business other than getting past them both in order to make up more places to try and negate the damage that these cars at the head of the field will do, and taking points away from him before drop scores.
Yeah, he's got a real fine balancing act, and he's also got to remember there's 2 races tonight, so he's got to make up some space on his first one, and then hopefully he'll also make up some space on the second one. I think his probably aim should be the second race at the moment and just making the most of this first one.
He's doing the best he can. He's up to 14th now, passing Jim Earlham, so that's another spot taken for him already. And his next target is going to be Tom McEwing. I think Andy Parker's actually dropped down a couple more spots, so he's down at the 19th position. We're on board with Christian Zaruta. He's trying to go with one of his fellow DPR drivers, with James Murphy getting a little sideways on the exit of Nelson. So we're trying to close in that gap to the 2 cars in front. The gap between second and third is currently still 1.4 seconds, so it's stabilised a little bit, but Rowe is starting to try and break away if he can outside that golden half a second advantage. And back down again under brakings. They turn through the left-hander at Murray's. There's the top 6 all in shot together. It's Zaruta in 4th, Stelling 5th, and then McConaughey in 6th. Here comes the scrap for 7th. This is Arnell and Fowler being chased down by Paul Fernerhuff, and then Tim Vanahy round out the top 10. And that's for Steve McMaster. He's up 2 more spots to 12, and he's now ahead of Tom McEwing. Now his next target is Tom Willis, and once he's done that, Chris, he'll have the top 10 possibly in his sights. If he can put some quick laps in the next couple of laps, there's every chance he could crack it and catch up to these guys, who again will make his task even easier if they keep battling like this.
As he moves further up through the field, though, he is going to find those battles are becoming even harder, and obviously as the speed increases, the higher up you go, the harder it is for you to make your moves. So yeah, the more he can keep making momentum and moves now, the better, and like I say, he's done a good job to now getting up to 11th place.
It looks as though this battle, this sort of possible temporary truce between David Rowe and Jaroslav Cherney isn't quite working as well as they both hoped here, because Murphy is now got the gap down by another couple of tenths, and he is edging closer, and he's just about got Christian Zaruta latching onto his coattails to try and go with him, because the gap between Murphy and Cherney is 1.1 seconds. It's a further second to Zaruta in 4th. Just I think's having a good run in 5th position with Blair McConaughey there in 6th. James Fowler, I've just seen on the timing tower, has just taken 7th place from Steve Arnell, and as for Steve McMaster, he's got past Tom Willis. So he's now got the chance to use the clear air he's got to put to close in. And already it looks as though he's got some superior pace. I think one car's had a spin in the background and dropped down the order. And that is... sorry, say again?
I think that was Michael Coomer in the background spinning around.
Yeah, looked like it, yeah, because he's dropped down to 20th position. So good spot on the timing screen for that. But now, as we look with the leaders, look at the gap now between Murphy and Cherney. Now it's less than a second. So I think here, possibly if Cherney was trying to work together with David Rowe, 1, Rowe's not complying in terms of working with him, and 2, his efforts to try and get past him and holding each other up is only bringing David's DPR teammates straight into the mix here. So these 3 drivers, 2nd, 3rd and 4th, while McMaster's behind them, should be trying to make hay while the sun shines, but at the moment they're so focused with each other that, well, Cherney's so focused with David Rowe, he's not realising that Murphy's creeping up behind him, closing in now to almost within that half a second.
Like a good cup of tea, this one's brewing, isn't it? This one's definitely getting ready to become, you know, a great end to this race. As you say, Murphy is now becoming part of this front battle, and Cherney definitely knows it. Yeah,
fastest lap. But actually, that's the... I'm staggered by the lap time. That's even quicker than qualifying, isn't it? 2 minutes 4.985 from James Murphy. That was that when he needed it in qualifying. That was a staggering lap in race trim for him. So incredible pace for James, lapping better than qualifying at the moment. And he's fractionally outside that half a second margin. He's about 7/10 away, 6.5, and just needs to keep on edging. And again, this battling between Cherney trying to get around Rowe and Rowe holding him up, it's only going to bring him into play here. And possibly maybe there's a small part of Rowe that knows that, because he knows that obviously James come into it in 3rd place. Maybe he wants to try and recruit James a little bit here for a bit of a double-pronged DPR attack if he can help it. And Cherney, of course, will be the innocent party between them. You see them go through the left-hander at Hamilton's, up towards Oggy's. It's a bit of a tricky corner. This usually break in a straight line, very early apex, and the corner just opens out as you start to put the power on all the way through this long right-hander. And then it's a short shoot down towards the right-hander here at Williams. A little wide there from Jaroslav Cherney. He loses a little bit of traction, so he's kept the momentum somehow, I think. But now down the straight again, seeing David Rowe weaving to try and catch the toe as much as he can, but he's actually managed to break it as Cherney keeps the racing line down to the underneath the bridge into Brundle and Nelson. It's still to hit the brakes now with just under 5 minutes to go. Rowe from Cherney, from Zaruta, and from McMaster. This is Blair McConaughey now as he gets all crossed up on the exit of Nelson, getting over the curves, but he is still on hot pursuit of Edward Jaselic, the Belgian driver in front, and the green and yellow Caterham. As for McMaster, the gap that was 2.5 seconds to Paul Ferdinand is now only half a second now to get into the top 10. And actually, he's got quite a gaggle of cars in front. He's looking to the inside, possibly into Coram. It's a long right-hander, but looks like everyone's stuck into the lead. There is Paul Ferdinand. There, just right behind them in the light blue car with the two red front wings, is Steve McMaster. He's going to look up the inside. He's getting very caught up in the cars. Look at that. Wait, what was a free pass, but he's been caught up in an incident that really wasn't his fault. And once again, for the second time tonight, Steve McMaster, Chris, getting involved in incidents that had nothing to do with him. And sadly, his progress up the top 10 once again has been blunted with not that much long to go.
Yeah, it's not going well, is it? I think this is definitely not to plan at the moment, but as we see out front, James Murphy just losing. He's really pushing the acceleration zones and really pushing the rear end. But this is now David Rowe's opportunity, as Cherney has got a mirror full of the Murphy car.
It's a key thing to point out that James Murphy's two worst scores to drop will be the 18th and 18 and 26 points that he scored right at the season opener at Alton Park. Everything else since then has been pretty much in and around the top 5. But after the first race at Cadwell Park, he actually hasn't finished a race lower than 3rd. So, pretty impressive run so far. He'll continue that run if he does finish 3rd here. The fact that he's with 3.5 minutes to go, he's only just a couple of not even a car length behind Jaroslav Cherney means there's a possibility he could snatch the victory, and he is within that half a second range, that all-important golden range he needs. Just stay there as he gets a good run. Cherney's a bit tentative through the right hand at Williams in the last couple of laps. He's going to be in the toe this time, but Cherney at the same time will have the toe on David Rowe. Let's see if David tries to break it. He does go to what will be the racing line. Cherney goes with him, but he's not close enough to actually make a dive. Neither is Murphy. I think what's also helping Cherney is that the toe he's getting is helping him pull away ever so slightly to put himself just out of range of James Murphy. There's Christian Zaruta in the white car in 4th position as Murphy kicks up the dust and runs a little wide on the exit of Nelson. That's going to compromise his run a little bit as they go through the bomb hole, the right-hander that just compresses on the apex and heads up to the side. I remember when that was first being developed, the circuit being redeveloped, there was a threat to say there was going to be hell to pay if the bomb hole was modified in any way, and thankfully they kept it as it was because it's such a unique corner on this circuit. And as they come onto the pit straight now with 2.5 minutes to go, this is the view from Jaroslav Cherney staring at the roll cage at the rear end of David Rowe's car. He had headlights, he'd be flashing them right now, but the 420Rs don't have that for aerodynamic purpose. Down and towards the right hander, they're going to have 2 more laps. So when this one's completed, they'll be on the final lap of this first race. David Rowe, you have to say, Chris, has pretty much put up, touch wood, because I don't want to say anything that might possibly spoil it. He's put in quite an impressive drive here. It's not over yet, but David Rowe's doing everything he needs to. I'll hold off finishing that in a second because Cherney is trying to creep up the inside and possibly the outside line here to get into Wilson. He is forcing David to go into defensive mode here. I was going to say that David's putting up a pretty good defensive effort here to hold on to the race. And again, if he keeps on doing this, he's just backing Cherney into Murphy to make it a double trouble for DPR. If he tries to attack, which he's trying now, that Cherney's getting desperate. He knows if he wants to try and get away from this scrap, it's an obvious thing to say, but he has to get past Rowe as quick as possible. Otherwise, he'll have two DPR cars to worry about rather than just the one of them. So,
interestingly, when we were in the onboard there, Cherney decided he wasn't interested to see David Rowe go wide. That's not going to help his cause. Cherney going around the outside of Oggies. That's not really an overtaking spot. So Rowe should be able to defend it, but actually, no, he hasn't. He has succumbed to the pressure of Cherney there, and I was going to say he was happy to sit there into turn 1, but you could tell from then on he was not happy. With only a minute to go, this is now the time to move, or you're going to be in second.
Yeah, so Cherney then takes the lead quite crucially. So a small mistake by locking up there for David Rowe. He has got rear gunner support from James Murphy, but how much he'll be able to help him remains to be seen as the top 3 are all together nose to tail, and Zaruta is coming. He really is getting closer and closer. The gap between second, third and fourth is now just under 2 seconds, and it's ebbing away corner by corner. So Zaruta is trying to arrive onto the tail of these 3. It'll have to be something pretty dramatic for him to do that, as David Rowe thought about going up the inside. Murphy's taking a slightly wider run through it to get a slingshot for the right line into Murray's. Rowe thought about possibly trying to put himself on the inside for the left-hander onto the pit straight, but now all 3 are together. This should be intriguing. Onto the pit straight. The last lap of the first race, and Rowe is really tucked under the roll cage as he looks to the outside line. Murphy gets a double toe from the pair of them. Cross line they go. They're side by side, the championship contenders. Murphy might make it 3 abreast as Cherney defends up the inside line. Rowe takes the high, wide and handsome line round the outside, which he's done once before. And that almost didn't work out as he ran very wide and almost went off onto the grass. But you have to admit, actually looking at it, that was actually some great tactical driving, whether it was purposeful or not, by both DPR drivers, because Cheney was so bothered with what Murphy was doing up the inside line with distraction, it actually forced him to not even realise that Murphy Rowe was going around the outside. And now, as they continue to battle, look who's arriving quickly on the tail. It's Christian Zaruta, with now about 3/4 of a lap to go. Genuinely, I cannot tell who's going to win this race. It's so close, and any 4 of them, because I'm counting Christian into it as well, could possibly steal it away here.
Yeah, so Cherney knows who he's battling with for that championship place. He knows that actually Rowe is not really his main contender, and Murphy is, and that's why we saw him defend so heavily into that turn 1, neither of them willing to give, and that's what let David get away with a mistake, and it looks like he is going to get this win based on the fact that Cherney is now in full defensive mode against Murphy.
He's certainly trying to put his car in all the right places at all the right times. Murphy sat back a little bit on the grass there for Cherney, and that might just give Murphy the run he needs onto the back straight here, on the Bentley straight for the final time. And look at that. You see at the gap now, he's just outside at half a second. We're on board with James Murphy. Here he comes to the outside line. Is it going to be a DPR 1-2 by the time they get into the braking zone? Cherney won't give up. He's going to stand his ground on the inside toward the front of the Nelson complex. Under the bridge for the last time. They are almost side by side, but slotting him still in front is going to be Cherney. Murphy will get him back on the undercut if he can, but he can't squeeze alongside quick enough. He looks to the outside. Cherney just moves across, and Murphy puts a wheel onto the grass, but there's no drama there. And Cherney, again, doesn't feel comfortable going to the racing line. He has to go to the outside to defend. Murphy's trying to just prise the door open through Coram, but he might not be close enough. It could be a sprint to the finish here. Murphy going round the outside to have a look, but it's not going to happen. So out of the final corner for the last time, Rowe looks like he's got this in the bag. The second, it could be a very tight affair as it comes to the checkered flag, but David Rowe takes a very important victory in the second to last race of the season here at Snetterton. Cross the line he goes. It's Rowe who takes victory, only just from Cherney in second place, who only just holds off James Murphy. 4th for Christian Zaruta, 5th for Blair McConaughey. It's 6th for Emil Jaselic, and a 7th for Steve Arnell. And despite spinning twice in the race, hats off to Steve McMaster. It's a lonely one, but it is still there. He is 8th position. So incredible stuff for Steve to pick his way through to still get a top 10 finish despite spinning twice in incidents that were almost really no fault of his own. 9th for Tom Willis and 10th for Tom McEwen. That's one of his personal best results. So well done to Tom to getting a top 10 finish. It's Fernerhuff in 11th, from Fowler in 12th, and then Van Heat, Rodman, Curtis and Parker. For the last 3 spots, we see Earlham, Mitchell and Hilton all cross the line together. And then Michael Coomber, who spun earlier on, is the last car to take the flag in 20th place. So, take stock for a second, everyone. I know that Chris is possibly going to try and, if he can, possibly update the points. If he can, great. If not, then we'll move on to how it looks afterwards, shortly afterwards. But even so, David Rowe then, as we look at the results, David Rowe picks up the victory then from Jaroslav Cherney in second place, from James Murphy in third, and Christian Zaruta 4th, and Blair McConaughey 5th. Emma Jaselic 6th from Steve Arnell. Steve McMaster, who went up and down the order, got up to about 11th place, spun, picked him back up to 8th, so that's his worst score now. So he has to drop one of them, but he'll gain points back as a result of it. He gains 30 points back, because that was his last worst result when he did the second race at Thruxton, from calculating that on the points table here. Tom Willis is 9th, Tom McEwen 10th, then it's an 11th place for Paul Fernerhuff, and it's James Fowler, Tim Vanhee, Mark Rodman, Alan Curtis, Andrew Parker, Jim Earlham, Dan Mitchell, Mike Hilton and Mike Coomber. That's the 20 cars that all started and the 20 cars that all finished. So if there's time to do so, I will fill for a moment whilst if Chris is able to do so, to quickly update.
It'll be in our 2-minute countdown that I'll hopefully be able to do it. So I am in the background now, rapidly seeing whether we can get it done.
So your 2-minute countdown starts now. It's a minute and 20 seconds, in fact. So you got even less by the looks of things.
Yes.
So that's the challenge. So then, the grid, of course, is set by the results of race number 1, and this is the crunch point, as we mentioned. This is the key race of the season, because this is where ultimately it will all be decided, because now we have to go into the last race of the season, the second race of the evening here. And with the grid set by the results of race 1, it means we put David Rowe in pole position. Jaroslav Cherney is on the front row of the grid, but it's James Murphy and Christian Zaruta on the second row of the grid in 3rd and 4th. Blair McConaughey is 5th, from Emil Jaselic in 6th on the grid. But the car to watch out for after his storming progress back from what was at one point last up to 8th eventually is going to be Steve McMaster. He knows he has to score incredibly well in this second race to possibly get enough points to be able to secure it on drop scores to become champion still. He knows the likes of Cherney and Murphy and Rowe would have taken a handful of points away from him after they scored up on the podium places. Of course, Rowe from Cherney, with Murphy being the top 3. And of course, other factors in this race, of course, what will the likes of Christian Zaruta, Blair McConaughey, maybe Emil just I think could be a factor. Will Steve Arnell be able to make it difficult for Steve McMaster? What about the cars behind him, like Tom Willis and Tom McEwen? Can they do anything to stop him? They're out of the championship fight, but it might prove catalysts depending on what's going on. Right, we've got that 2-minute countdown now, in fact. It was a bit of an intermediate break between, I think, sessions before we gridded up for the second race. Yeah. So I think whilst we're doing that, we should give a big thank you, of course, to everyone who has taken part in the caterhamracer.com races. Of course, without you guys, obviously, we wouldn't have a championship, obviously. And a big thank you also to the 3 sponsors that we've had supporting the championship all season. We've had just Add Lightness, of course, for performance LED lights for the Caterham 7. We've had Design and Display Structures. We've also had, of course, Avon Tyres supporting us as well, because they're the official tyre supplier of Caterham Motorsport. So to all 3 of you, thank you very much for your support as well. And thank you to all who's been competing. We should also say some congratulations in order in the real world, because we have already now, Chris, crowned our first 2 Caterham champions of the year, because we have to say congratulations to our 2 brand new Academy champions, them being in the green group, Tom Cockrell, and in the white group, Taylor O'Flanagan. Neither of them raced in their final championship race to preserve their lead, but they did both take part in what I thought was one of the best Autumn Trophy races that I've seen for a few years, because there was a fantastic scrap at the front of the field between the regular front runners in both the green and white groups. Now, I have to say, Chris, if that's the flavour for next season, give me 2021 Road Sport now, because that was such a good race, and hopefully it lives up to what was an incredible race where there was nothing up for grabs apart from just the trophy and some bragging rights. No points, no championships anymore, just one last race to graduate in style, and they really did themselves proud, and it really stokes everybody up for what could be an electric Road Sport class next year in 2021.
Yep, so it really was a really brilliant year's racing in total for the Academy lot, but also the racing we saw at Donington there's some pretty great stuff. As we've got the red lights, I have got the scores updated, but we haven't got a time to show you at the moment.
Well, I'm sure we'll find out any point possibly after the race. If not, this is it then. Let's find out possibly who the champion's going to be. One more set of 15 minutes to decide who takes away the crown. The red lights go out, and for the final time in this year's season 2 of the 420Rs, we are racing. Now, from the front row of the grid, Shane did get a better start slightly than David Rowe on the sprint towards Richie's corner for the first time, and I think it might be Shirley with his nose in front as they turn in. And the answer is, just about, but it's there Christian Zaruta up to 3rd place. Possibly make that 2nd as David Rowe's run away. He's going from a lead, in fact, already up into Wilson Hairpin for the first time. And Zaruta with a mega start from the 2nd row of the grid leads, exiting out of Wilson Corner. What a getaway from Christian that was. So he now leads the way. Cherney in 2nd place. It's there Murphy that was 3rd. David Rowe, the race 1 winner, is down to 4th. And Steve McMaster already not hanging around. Up 2 spots from 8th to 6th. He's already on the tail of Embo Jaselinks here. So they come down the back straight. Shelley's already coming back here at Christian Zaruta. Shelley must be thinking, what on earth are you doing, Christian? You're not in the championship fight here. You're down in 8th position. He elbows him out wide, which isn't going to help him out either. That will frustrate Jaroslav as Murphy gets in front here and slots in between his DPR teammate and one of his main rivals for the championship. So it's DPR cars 1st, 2nd and 4th. Shelley stuck in the middle in 3rd position. But Master will try and get past if he can. Jaselinks, who himself is putting on the pressure on, well, he was on David Rowe, but he runs wide ups. Oh, not again. McMaster's been involved. He taps Jaselinks and round he goes. Oh, and he gets held up by Jaselinks. He just seems to have forgotten where the brake pedal is, because he needs to stop the car to allow him to get away again. Oh, that once again, Chris.
That was of McMaster's own making, that one. He lost the rear end coming out that corner just on power. So McMaster, I think, has only got himself, unless he got a tap, he's only got himself to blame for that one, I think.
But even so, it's just not Steve McMaster's night, is it? Regardless of who is to blame on that one. Once again, hitting strife, and unfortunately, unless he really does recover and he has more drop scores to bounce back on, it might just be a case of now, Chris, he's got to hope that he can score as high as he can and possibly rely on results as Zaruta runs wide onto the grass and up the inside goes Murphy, but somehow keeping his foot in, Zaruta kept in front. So you can't say that they're not trying for this championship on the last lap, as we see in the last race of the season. It's only lap 1, and they've basically gone berserk.
Yeah, so the championship table, so Steve is still pretty comfortable out front, even with these drop scores, and probably he can drop this one unless something very miraculous happens. I think he's going to still be okay, but you see Christian there, he's a wily character, and he knows that he's not the one fighting for the championship, and he wants to make this his first win.
Well, it could be these 3 are pressed into Richie's corner. Hold on to your hats. It's Murphy up the inside line. Zaruta gets edged out wide. It's then Journey has to capitulate and let them both go. Now they're side by side. He tries to prise the door up and get into the middle. A little bit of contact between both of them. Here comes Rowe down the outside to make it 2 by 2 into Wilson Hairpin. What I love about this is Zaruta is the catalyst. He's down in 8th in points coming into the weekend, but quite frankly, he wants the race win. He literally does not care. this is going to be the case of him simply going for the victory as best he can. If he holds up the 3 cars behind him, as far as he's concerned, so be it.
He is going to try for 15 minutes of being elbows out and holding all these guys up behind. And unfortunately for them, that means they're going to have to concentrate extra hard because they're going to be following a slightly slower car, which means that everything is going to be bunched up and there's going to be no breathing room for the whole of this race.
There's no breathing room right now, I can tell you that, between these top 4. It is one 16-wheeled 420R practically. Here comes Cherney making a dive. Lock up from Murphy up the inside. He sends the check drivers up the inside, which he is. Tries to get the power down to squeeze his way past. They come up towards the right-hander at Williams. Is Murphy going to go around the outside and follow his teammate Zaruta through? Yes, he does. So Cherney's still in 3rd position. Little wiggle of oversteer. And look at this, all 4 of them in one line together, tucked up one behind the other. This is going to be pretty crucial here. Here goes Murphy to make the move because he knows he's got to get the points to get himself in the championship. I suspect, well, I was going to suspect he's going to have it easy, but it looks as though Zaruta might be that much obliging. He has to, because into Nelson he lets him through. He's going to let Cherney through as well because Zaruta's wide on the exit. Cherney is up the inside into the bomb hole. Gets his nose, but Zaruta stands his ground. There's a bit of wheel rubbing, but still Zaruta will not give way. And again, why not? He's got 2nd place. He's every right to be there, whether he's frustrating Cherney or not, and whether he's a DPR driver, he's in 2nd place on pure pace, so he deserves to be there.
Yeah, he's made those places up, and he's not doing anything untoward. He is just holding his ground and being very assertive, which is all you need to do in that position. But we are seeing, you know, it's almost like a cork in the bottle. I think once we see him lose a couple of places, it may be that he does slip back into that 4th place he was in from the first race.
What was intriguing there is he was almost bump drafting his teammate there. Zaruta goes very deep. There's a David Rowe. Oh, they're 3 abreast on the exit almost. They've got to be careful. Big contact, and they have. Round goes Zaruta, round goes Murphy. They both go around. That's another championship contender hitting strife. But McMaster with the fastest lap of the race for what it's worth, but he's back in 14th place. I think we have to ask the question, Chris. Does anyone want to win this championship? Because McMaster's hit strife after contact. Now, unfortunately, with his own teammate, James Murphy has. It looks as though Rowe and Cherney are next, but at this rate, both of them are going to hit strife as well, and we're never going to get a champion.
It's it does seem like they're trying to throw it away. Like I say, that all the guys up front did have a lot of drop scores that they could rely on, so I think we're probably still okay, but it's not an ideal end to the season. I think that was almost inevitable, wasn't it? They were so close for so many corners that there was going to be a slight touch of wheels at one point, and we saw that going around Riches. Turns out that going 2x2 through Riches is not a sensible idea.
I don't know how anyone would have thought anything less, to be honest, on that side of things. There's Rowe a little bit wide there through Oggy, so at the moment it appears to be advantage Cherney because he's got that gap now of 1.1 seconds with Rowe trying to go with him. He's very much so break the toe and how. But we need to look behind as well because there's some great personal best that could be going on here. Blair McConaughey is currently sat in 3rd place. Tom McEwing, who's not even in the top 10 in points, he's actually sat in 14th in points, and his best result so far this season has been scoring 25. His best result came out actually last time out at Donington Park. So incredibly, Tom is absolutely having a whale of a time in this race here because you've got Fowler and Zaruta close here. Next coming through are Willis and then Van He, and then we've now got James Murphy gone down to 11th. So I think he's hit even more strife throughout this race to drop out of the top 10. So not going well for Murphy. In fact, ironically, look who's right behind him, the recovering Steve McMaster. So again, these two are going to want to try and stay ahead of each other. But at the same time, they've got little time to do it, but if they can possibly try and work together a little bit to try and pick off the cars one by one, they can mutually help each other. We're trying to negate how much they lose in terms of points. I think it may turn out to be one of James's worst scores now, because his worst scores were, as I said, were at 18 points and 26 points, and they were both scored at the Alton Park opener. So if he can pick up a couple more spots and make the most of it, there's a chance he could possibly negate any other points he's about to lose. And if he can try and work with Steve McMaster, if it's even possible, then who knows? It may not be completely over, but it's going to make for a heck of a calculation at the end of it, isn't it? Yeah,
so looking at that, the scores coming into this, the last round then, Steve McMaster is 365 in total score. Cherney is actually 358, which is the closest he's been all year, I think, to McMaster. However, on drop scores, McMaster still commands an 9-point lead over, so I think he's still quite safe from Cherney's attack. But Cherney's certainly doing the most he can to try and maximise his chances.
So from what we calculate at the moment, if the position were to stay, let's say, as they were, we're saying that the Master, incredibly, is still in line, unbelievably, to still possibly win the championship, do we think?
Yeah, I think so. I think he gave himself enough gap at the beginning of this evening that he's going to be safe even with these poor results.
Okay, well, we'll go on that basis then. McMaster, despite the fact he is 12th behind James Murphy, will make it now behind Andy Parker, because James Murphy's made it up to 10th now at the expense of Parker. Looks as though incredibly, despite everything he's gone through, still on course potentially and provisionally to pick up the title. So let's wait and see how the points shake out just afterwards, as they, I'm sure Chris will fill them in as best quick as he can in lifetime if he can. Here's Christian Zaruta making a recovery around the outside. So James Fowler does not want to give it up that easy. He can still brave it around the outside through Brendan Nelson. He stands his ground and he holds on to the position. So nothing doing there. Now Tom McEwen again, who is in a bit of unfamiliar territory. He's up into the dizzying heights of 4th place here, but again kept his nose clean and managed to pick his way through all the drama that's gone on around him. So giving some confidence going, of course, into next year's academy, being one of next year's new drivers. Behind him we've got
yeah, I was going to say, I think the seas must have parted for him in those 2 incidents that he just absolutely sailed through the middle of them. But he has got 2 wily characters coming up behind him now, so I'm sure he is a little focused on the mirrors at this point.
Well, it looks like Zaruta's got the toe ever so slightly as he pulls alongside James Fowler. That will help Zaruta. He's not afraid to go deep into this first corner, and he's using the kind of same line he was using when he made contact with James Murphy. And this time, it has worked. So yes, he is back through then. And into what is now currently 5th, and it could be 4th, because if he can pick off Tom McEwen, no disrespect to Tom saying, but it might possibly be easy pickings unless Tom puts his car in the middle of the road and makes it increasingly difficult for the man in what I call the Brawn GP Special to try and pick his way past and collect 4th place. They're 2nd and 3rd on the screen. We saw just there. That was David Rowe, and there goes Blair McConaughey, and there goes Christian Zaruta diving up the inside, gets it stopped, and just parks it just on the exit there on the apex to sweep in front. So that was a pretty daring move. And again, even though Christian's not in the championship fight, a pretty commanding move, which possibly shows that if he had done those missing rounds, he could be even higher up. He could have been a real contender, given he could pull off moves like that from that far back.
Yeah, that's a very, very common Snetterton to move that down into Agostini hairpin. Just got to be careful on the exit, and he did manage to hold it all together. As we see McConaughey, is he going to be able to catch this up? At the front here, we've got big gaps now. Obviously, those incidents have caused gaps, as we see Christian in the background there, like zigzagging to try and shake the toe off as we come down along Bentley Straight. But McConaughey in 3rd place, that's got to be a great result if he can hold on to this towards the end.
Yeah, Blair McConaughey, his best result looks to be around about possibly a 5th or a 6th, so he hasn't actually finished this high before. It'll be his first podium if he can hang on. Of course, the big thing is if he can hang on, of course, because anything can happen with now Christian's route up to 4th. James Fowler has also got past Tom McEwen, so he's now put McEwen down to 6th after he was as high as 4th position. As for the 2 recovering drivers, James Murphy for some reason has gone back down again to 12. Steve McMaster is now up into the top 10, so doing just as much damage limitation as he can to hold on. There he is, look on the screen, the pale blue car with the 2 red wings. He's not too far away from from Steve Barnell in 9th position. David Rowe sets the fastest lap in the race, but the gap between him and Cherney is 1.7 seconds. So unless there is a dramatic issue for Cherney, touch wood, can't really see Rowe pulling this one in. And so Matthew resided to wherever he finishes up in the 7th. Whether he'll still be in the top 3 or not, I guess remains to be seen. 3 abreast casually in the back. Further back, we've got that's Ferdinand, Curtis, and Earlham, and it's going to be Earlham that gets in front. No, it's Curtis that gets in front of all of them, or does momentarily, outbreaks himself, and everyone sort of checked up in sort of, I think, sort of being a bit scared of the fact of where he was going to go on the rejoin. He went very wide, and everyone went, well, I'm not going inside there. I'm going to try and hold on as best I can if it's possible. And they're all parking the cars in the apex as best they can. Ferdinand goes round the outside. That wasn't going to work, and oh dear, off into the barriers goes. That is Alan Curtis off the road as well. So I saw Jim Earlham off the road in the background. So all sorts kicking off, including here Tim Van Heat. More battles going. We've got Tom McEwen going to lose another place by the looks of it to Van Heat, which he does. And also Tom Willis is the next person to put an attack on. So it was the promising start in the first few laps of McEwen, keeping out of trouble. But sadly, with the place disadvantage that he has on everyone else, although as I say that, Tim Van Heat runs wide, so I'm giving the place back if he can. But it seems to be, no disrespect intended, sort of rather marching towards the back of the top 10 in these closing stages.
No, I think he would accept that. He hasn't got the ultimate pace of some of these top guys, but as he drifts slowly backwards down the field, he'll eventually find his level, and I think that might be where he's at now, because he's certainly been battling with these 2 guys for probably a couple of laps now.
See, one person who could benefit from it. He's not too far away from all of this. Oh, in fact, he will now, because 2 cars gone sideways. McEwen's off. Looks like Willis is off. I think somehow, who's the one that survived from that? It was... Who survived from that? I was looking to see, it was Willis that survived from that. When Arnell's now in 7th place, I was literally about to say the biggest benefactor of all of that if something happens is going to be Steve McMaster. He's going to go to 7th place. and it's almost like just the seas parted and through he went. He just opened up the gap and it was easy as pie. So he's into 7th now. He could be looking at 6th. And I'll tell you what, Chris, I'm pretty certain that if he can get 6th, I think if we're both agreed on drop scores, it provisionally could be even for him. Almost guaranteed to be game, set, and match for the championship on drop scores.
Yeah, I think he's dead set and is going to be okay. But like he probably made that mistake for himself at the beginning of the race, but now he's having some good luck back as I say, all the cars in front of him seem like they want to have a little cuddle and a tickle, don't they?
It's been a good karma for Steve. Obviously, he's had lots of bad karma throughout the race, so certainly working in his favour. And I think it possibly might be a case of, truthfully, when rather than if he gets past Tom Willis, and the when looks like it's about to happen. He did turn him through Palmer's, but couldn't quite get the move there. There is Tom McEwing, who's still chasing after the recovering James Murphy, who has sprung back up to 9th quietly in the background after looking at that. And now it's McMaster's turn to defending rather than attacking, because back up the outside goes Steve Arnell. He's been good on single lap pace, but his race pace has just dropped back a little bit, and getting caught up in 1 or 2 skirmishes hasn't helped him out either. Murphy, meanwhile, has cleared the battle of the 10th, 11th and 12th between McEwing, Van He and Parker, so he's only got a minute or so to go. McMaster puts 2 wheels onto the grass. It's not over yet, Steve. He might possibly be in a provisional position to take the title on drop scores, but it's not over yet. You can't celebrate and go Larry just at this moment. But he will certainly want to see if he can get himself into the top 6, I'm sure, Chris, to round off the season in what should be his penultimate lap before he wraps things up in the best possible fashion. If he can get himself into that extra spot and a couple more points to give him that extra cushion once the drop scores are calculated.
Yeah, I think so. The battle that we were really hoping to see was Murphy and Cherney, and I think that's now been settled with Murphy drifting back down the scores, and I don't think Murphy's going to be able to do anything after the race 1 as well, where there weren't enough points between the two of them to really shove that gap in. So it looks like the top 3 of the championship coming in may well, even though they've tried their best, are going to come out looking about the similar, and with Rowe and Chiruta sort of having a good battle there back down in 4th and 5th.
So as we go on to the final lap of the season, I've also realised one thing looking at the standings. The trend that we've had throughout the season is whoever wins the first race goes on to win the second race. But if it stays as it is, Chris, we're going to break that in this second race, because David Rowe, who won the first race, he's 2.5 seconds back from Cherney. If Cherney wins it, that whole streak is broken. Yeah,
our last race of the season to break the streak. Why not? The exception to prove the rule.
Absolutely. So David Rowe trying to close in as quick as he can, but again, it'll take, wood, no curse intended, a mistake from Cherney in front to bring that 2.5 seconds down to put him into position to overtake. So far, it doesn't look as though it's happening just yet. Back into Agostini's 4 last time under brakes. And David Rowe turns his way through. Now for 6th position. Willis has it, but if McMaster can get it, he'll certainly want to pick him off at Agostini's if he can. Tries to move alongside and break for Agostini. Will he break that a little bit later and possibly go for the undercut? McMaster goes, forget this, I want to win it in style, rounding outside. And it's working on the exit of Agostini. He's through. Great job. So McMaster thinks, if I'm going to win this, I'm going to win it my way, in style, round the outside. So it's one little last classy move to possibly taking forwards, hopefully mistake-free now to the last remainder of the lap, to go ahead and pick up the victory, and looks like it as well, the provisional championship title as well. Yep, it was an absolutely brilliant move of a champion there around the outside of Agostini. It's a pretty difficult move to pull off, but he managed to do it. However, it does put him ahead going down a long straight, which is not necessarily the place you want to be, but we'll leave that one for now and see whether he could stay ahead of Willis as he comes down the Bentley straight. But it has been pretty easy for Cherney since that opening salvo and the opening issues, and David Rowe just not able to make an impact over the course of the distance. Well, it might not be the championship, but he's been an absolutely valiant competitor all season. He knows his car's inside out, and he's certainly driven like it. He's been a worthy competitor and a worthy race winner, and he will be today. It might not quite be the championship, but he will at least end the season on a high heading into season 3. It's the checkered flag and the final race winner of the season for Jaroslav Cherney. 2nd for David Rowe as he heads to the pit wall. A first podium of 420 yards for Blair McConaughey. And now we wait. 4th, 5th and 6th will come across the line. Is Giroud 4th, James Fowler 5th, but across the line in 6th position, provisionally is your Season 2 caterhamracer.com 420R champion, Steve McMaster, with a fucking job, and they're still trying to crash on the pit straight as James Murphy thinks, to hell with this, I'll go up the inside and squeeze up the pit walls, try and get himself up higher than 10th, but he can't quite do it. But there it is then, even though everything that's happened to him tonight, Steve McMaster is provisionally crowned the 420R champion in Season 2 of the caterhamracer.com series. An incredible effort, and he did it the easy way, and he did it in the most harem-scaring way possible. I think it's safe to say, Chris, He doesn't make it easy for himself, does he? But he has, it looks to me, finally achieved it.
Yeah, he's been the class of the season, and tonight's been his only blip in that whole year-long campaign. So I think we can grant him that and still class him the deserved champion. But it shows that, you know, it's never over till it's over, and nerves can play a part in results. So yeah, great result, and I'm really happy for Steve.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of drivers who'll be congratulating him with not only just Cheney's win, but also McMaster's title wrap-up as well. But there's the final result of the 420R season on the screen in front of you, and with the last race of the season, the double winner streak, as we said, is broken because it's not the same person that won the first race that wins the second. Cherney picks up the win from David Rowe in second place, then McConaughey with his first 420R series podium in third, and Christian Zaruta fourth, James Fowler, and provisionally the new champion, Steve McMaster, finishes in sixth, despite more dramas on the opening couple of laps to put him down the order. Seventh goes to Tom Willis from Tom McEwing in eighth. Steve Ardell is ninth, and despite the small little skirmish on the run to the pit straight just now at the checkered flag, James Murphy somehow still finishes 10th. 11th goes to Andrew Parker from Tim Van He in 12th, followed by Emil Jesseling and Paul Ferdehuff, and Alan Curtis and Michael Coomber. Then it's Mike Hilton, Daniel Mitchell, Jim Elam, and Mark Rodman who finish off the finishes for our last race of the season. So that is one championship done, and I'm sure that in a moment we'll have a chat to hopefully our provisional new champion as well as other drivers in the mix. But after all of that, I know he's still got one more to go, but after everything in 420 that was quite an eventful and quick season. But in many cases, that was a fantastic way to end it, chaotic as it was, and some incredible racing to finish off what has been a quite stellar second season.
Yeah, they didn't go without, go quietly, did they? Out to the last event, it was, absolutely action-packed from start to finish there. Unfortunately, we had some contact, which is again not unheard of, and given that they were racing seemingly like one car stuck together at all four corners, it was very close racing. It's not surprising that there has been some incident, and it just goes to show that it just. McMaster has had a good season, and it just shows what's needed to actually win a championship online, just as it is in real life. You need that consistency so that when things don't go to plan, you've still got that buffer, and you can still pull things home.
So I think for the final time 420Rs, you better don your headset and your microphone and do your best Martin Brundle impression and see if we can have a walk down the virtual pit lane and have a chat to some drivers. I'm sure that the drivers around in the top four of the championship, if they're around, the likes of David Rowe and James Murphy, and particularly Steve McMaster, are going to be around to have a word with, I would like to think. So I think the best thing is, as I mentioned, for the last time in 420Rs, off you go, Chris, and see if we can find.
So I'm hoping that we have got our new champion, Steve McMaster, in the commentary box.
You've got parts of him. I'm not sure here at the moment, but yeah, no, I'm here. How you doing, boys?
Yeah, very good. And just as well, you had that massive padding coming into the evening, because I think that might have protected you there. We're still sort of doing some totting up in the background, but I think you had enough of a margin to get away with what wasn't a straightforward evening for you.
It was all part of the plan, Cheesy. You know, it was all part of the plan. No, it was... yeah, I couldn't have had a worse night, to be fair. Contact in race one, and listen, it was a tight battle up front, so no quarter given or taken. And then my own mistake in race two, trying to make up some spaces just to protect that margin, as you say. So yeah, but listen, it's great. It's fantastic to win any championship, and with the guys that we've got here. And the quality of racers and online guys, it's just fantastic. I'm so pleased.
Yeah, I mean, and it's taken a very consistent season all year by yourself in the 420s to pull that off, and everyone's giving it their all just as they do in real life. So there is no quarter given or taken. So yeah, from us to you, congratulations on that win, and I hope to see you in future seasons.
Oh, absolutely. And listen, just a couple of thanks. And so obviously to the guys that we're racing with, there's a fair amount of effort that goes in by all of the guys to get out, do the pre-quali and the racing every Tuesday night. To my wife and family for giving me up every Monday and Tuesday night. And finally to you guys and the sponsors for putting on such a great show and the coverage. It's just so fantastic to be able to kind of put this out there and to make it all work. So thank you to you guys as well.
That's great stuff. Thanks very much, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Well done.
Okay, I have updated the tables rapidly in the background, so I think it's worth showing how that has. This is the end season. This is all provisional until we've dealt with any issues. But as you can see there, McMaster did have enough to hold off Cherney, but it was a lot closer than it could have been at the end there.
Yeah, it really was. So there it is then. Let's give a very quick run through then. As the provisional results then for the championship on drop scores, we'll give you a full run through from top to bottom. I think we've got time to do that. So then, as it shows, with 338 points on drop scores, despite everything that went on, it was his 2 worst scores. So ironically, he was able to drop them and had enough of a cushion in the other rounds to use everything else that he had to his advantage. Steve McMaster provisionally is the 420R champion, but only, as Chris said, by the margin of 5 points. All the results he got through the season really were worth it to get those in order to have that cushion. Third goes to James Murphy in the end. Fourth, incredibly, he was away for at least for one meeting, but even so, he still uses those drop scores and uses them to full effect and actually gets a couple of decent scores. Christian Zaruta, despite David Rowe finishing ahead of him in both races, gets leapfrogged in the points. 307 points to David Rowe's 298, mainly because of the fact that Christian got so many strong results, despite the fact he had to drop both of his races that he missed at Donington Park. So that's pretty impressive nonetheless. Emma Jaselics wins the battle of the Belgian drivers, 6th in the points, just 2 ahead on drop scores from Tom Willis, James Fowler and Blair McConaughey. I think that's quite fitting, isn't it? So the top 3 from last year's Academy White Group in 2019, all together, not in the same order they finished in the points, but Willis, Fowler and McConaughey all together just proves that wherever at least two of them go on track, they always seem to follow each other, even in the sim racing. They always do it, which is fantastic to see. And then Tim Van Heat running up the top 10. Good effort for him in the Just Add Lightness sponsored car. Paul Fernhoff comes next in 11th. Steve Arnell in 12th, who improved throughout the season towards the end. 13th place goes to Tom McCune. 14th to Chris Skithercorn. Not sure who that is in 15th place with no name.
Mark Bennett is 15th there. He's just missing his name in the scoreboard.
Yeah, who is that there?
Mark Bennett.
Mark Bennett, excellent, thank you. And 16th for Andy Steele, Andrew Parker 17th, and then Alan Curtis, Michael Coomber, and Mark Rodman, James Hilton, Mike Hilton, James Wingfield, Jim Earlham, Graham Hopkins, Matt Shepherd, Daniel Mitchell, Jay Shepherd did a couple of rounds at the beginning from Wasp, one of the title contenders this year's Fun Cup Championship. Guy Crawford, who when he did appear, put on some surprising drives and put some great efforts. Philip Clark is next from him. And Paul Hawker, Gordon Sawyer, who's a real-life 420R driver, and Andy Lees, Jamie Elwood, Graham Johnson, who's a British GT racer from GT4, Tom Allen, Mark Sempers, Alberto Vea, and Richard Groom rounds out 38 drivers that even if they did one round, it still counts as a top effort. So I have to say, I don't know about you on that one, Chris, but after that long season, everything that happened, I'm a little bit pooped after that.
Yeah, it's been a lot of action throughout all these races, and you know, as Steve said, a lot of effort by a lot of people, the racers as well as yourself in the commentary box, Scott. So thanks for all your efforts, and a huge thank you to our sponsors who make this all possible. Just Add Lightness, Avon Tyres, and Design Display Structures. They've helped us out, and it's been a really great season. So thanks to all of those guys.
I think I appreciate that, of course, massively, Chris. Because I think, likewise, truthfully, everyone sure listening that's watching will join me in saying that ultimately the biggest person we have to thank is yourself, Chris. Because of course, without yourself creating a league and putting it on every week, obviously we wouldn't be here racing as we was, particularly in the first season under lockdown. Your conception of it has really given these guys some entertainment to come through and keep their hand in during the lockdown, and indeed during the season that we've had, which is great to see. So obviously we've still got another championship to settle next week, but of course from the season that we've had already to get one out of the bag, to do two consecutively on consecutive weeks, particularly leading up into race weeks as well, pretty impressive. So yeah, I'm sure that everyone else will agree that you've done a heck of a job, and I think it's incredible that you kept it going for season 2, and I know you will do for season 3 going forwards. And as we said, we're not done just yet. We still have one title wrapped up. There is still one more to settle, and it is the Academy Championship. Same time next week. It is the week of the real life Caterham season finale, which takes place in real life on the 31st of October. No puns of Halloween or scares or frights there, but hopefully there won't be any for any of the drivers in the real world. But before that, I'm sure there'll be 1 or 2 drivers who are competing on that weekend will race for the title in Academy. It's still pretty close there. If I go into the points looking on my screen for a second, I can tell you that going into the Academy Championship, it is going to be Jaroslav Cherney versus David Rowe with 4 points on drop totals. Actually, it's Cherney who leads by 4 points from David Rowe. And it's James Murphy just further back a further 11 points from 251. So 11 points separate the 3 drivers at the top of the table. And again, it's that story of Rowe versus Cherney versus Murphy that will go at it as they were tonight. So that's going to be quite an occasion on Monday. But I guess to round off the 420Rs, again, a champion Steve McMaster, some great racing up and down the order. I quite fancy doing it again in the winter, don't you?
That's exactly what I am intending to do. So if there are any budding drivers out there, please do get in touch if you want to get involved in our championships. You can reach us on Facebook or via our website, caterhamracer.com, and reach out. And if you're interested in getting involved, then we're interested in having you on board for what we're hoping is going to be another really great season 3 with lots of promise. We've got some new car models. We're ever improving that side of things as well, and we really do want to make this into the #1 Caterham racing, online racing situation.
Yeah, of course. We should also, of course, a massive thank you to Ben Obro and Jalso Cheney, the 2 main guys behind, developing these cars, not just with Ben Obro doing all the work with the skins, but Jalso taking on all the feedback from all the drivers in both cars, the 420Rs in the academy, to make them as incredible as possible. I know they're even talking about us on the Discord servers about the auto blip on downshifts and how they feel and how they work. So in terms of how the throttle cable works and the fly-by-wire, so very intimate stuff they're going into in terms of the detail they've got. But of course, it's crucial having all these real-world Caterham drivers to give that real-world feedback on the cars to make them as close as possible. So great stuff from them, of course. Again, big thank you to Chris, big thank you to everyone that's been taking part in this season. Still one more to go. And of course, the final time in this season, we can also give a thanks to our 3 sponsors, because again, this would not have been possible without the three sponsors in front of the screen. So again, a big, massive thank you once more goes to Just Add Lightness, who provide high-performance LED lights for the Caterham 7. A big thank you to Designers Spade Structures. Immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens, and to Avon Tyres, the official tyre supplier of Caterham Motorsport on road, on track, and on Avons. Do be sure to go and check all 3 of them out and give them some appreciation for supporting the series. For the last time for 420Rs, but not the last time for caterhamracer.com Season 2, from myself, Scott Woodwiss, and from Chris Hutchinson and everyone here at caterhamracer.com, thanks so much for watching. 1 title down, 1 champion crown. Steve McMaster is provisionally your 420R champion. Now the question is, who wins the Academy title? Join us at same time next week to find that out. But until then, stay safe, stay warm, stay happy as much as you can, and we'll see you next week.
Ta-da!